top of the page?
I think so. Not quite, but we'll get you there in just a second. Hi, I'm Rabbi Tobin. This is B'nai Shalom in West Orange, New Jersey, and it's Monday Talmud. The date is January 28th, and we are in Chapter 3 of Tractate Sanhedrin in the Schottenstein Talmud publication, page 25b2. All right, so let's do a quick little review. Where are we and how did we get here? Right? It's what Alice has to ask herself every once in a while when she finds herself down the rabbit hole. Where are we and how did we get here? There was a Mishnah back on 24a that is going to become relevant a little bit later today, where a person said, I accept your father, right? And there was this whole conversation, if I accept your father, then is your father acceptable? And the conversation was, am I accepting your father as a judge on a Beit Din, or am I accepting your father as a witness in the case? And then do I get to give up on that and say, well, I don't like what he said, I don't like where the court case went, so I'm now not going to accept him, or once you accept him, is it permanent? And we had all kinds of conversations around that. There's another Mishnah that talked about those who are not kosher witnesses, and it said the misachek bekubia, the dice player. It said the socher, or the socher shvi'it, the person who sells and deals in sabbatical year produce, which is forbidden, and the mafrichei yonim, pigeon flyers. And there's an argument immediate about whether those are pigeon racers, my pigeon gets there before your pigeon, or whether those are pigeon lurers or pigeon baiters who are trying to distract a pigeon to come so that maybe you're stealing someone's pigeon or something like that. The dice player was not kosher for one of two reasons, either because he doesn't have a job and doesn't participate in the good order of society and therefore isn't trustworthy to care about it, or perhaps because gambling is inherently an asmachta, it's an unacceptable form of business transaction because the two people don't have the same understanding about what's going to happen when they put the money down and when the person takes the money back, and therefore it is inherently a form of theft. Those two views kind of got kicked around a lot. The dominant view seems to be that the dice player is not kosher because he is not participating in the good economic order of society. The other opinion does pop up every once in a while, and it doesn't get completely thrown out. Then we got to mafrichei yonim, and we had an argument about, is this like the dice player or not like the dice player? Is it because one is a person doing the gambling and the other it's an animal doing the gambling, and that's enough of a reason that I need both cases in the Mishnah? Or are they completely different? One is about baiting and the other is about asmachta, and they have nothing to do with each other. And that didn't get entirely resolved. In the meantime, there was also the conversation about the socher shvi'it, the person who is selling shvi'it, sabbatical year produce, was not kosher as a witness. Here you go, Ira. Not 25b2. That person was not kosher as a witness. Obviously, he's doing something that's forbidden by Torah law. But they said it used to be the people who gathered shvi'it, and it later became the people who sold shvi'it, because gathering was necessary because of the tax collectors of Rome, basically, who were forcing you to turn over a certain amount of your produce. That doesn't mean you're breaking the sabbatical law about doing economic work with the land during that year. The last topic that got thrown in was a concept of, once you've done something that disqualifies you, is there anything that you can do to do tshuva, repentance, to repair that and to be back in good state, good standing, so that you're again going to be believable? And they brought up a story of a kosher butcher who sells treif, and they send him off to another town until such a time as he has really expensive accidental treif in his hands, and he fesses up and he gets rid of it without getting any benefit from it whatsoever. So there were a few different cases of people doing teshuvah and coming back into good graces. All right, so.
For that guy, what would he have to do? Like, he contributed to a non-kosher food bank, or, you know,
Not that guy. There was a very high bar for tshuva in most of these cases. So even though you're allowed to benefit from treif normally, as long as you're clear that it's treif, Like I can feed trafe to my dogs. I can sell trafe to the Fitzpatricks down the street. It could be perfectly good. It might be filet mignon of the highest grade trafe, right? So it's got value, and it could be. I can make profit off that. All those things. I just can't eat it myself. It's forbidden to me as a Jew. So he, on the other hand, because he has handled trafe in such an immoral or unethical way, is not allowed to even do that. If he has this trafe, he has to discard it completely. He's not allowed to benefit from trafe anymore, and that's just a high bar to show his level of regret, remorse, that he won't even touch it, he won't even be associated with it anymore. It's the only way for him to be believable. Okay, in 25b2, we start to conflate a lot of these issues. So you need to have all of those things that I just mentioned ready to go in your head at any minute. Right? So over the next half a page in the Talmud, there's going to be a number of different cases, arguments, and ideas that presume that all of the things that we just reviewed are at your fingertips. You know all that. They're going to reference it without going into it, and you say, oh yeah, that. Oh yeah, that. And you're going to know what it is. Okay? The main Mishnah that we're dealing with right now is we're going to start here with Sochrei Shvi'it, the sellers of Shvi'it, one last Mishnah. And then we're going to go back to Mafrichei Yonim, the pigeon flyers, and then it's going to move in another direction, where the rabbis in the Talmud, and they say the rabbis of Mishnah times, added other categories of people who were forbidden as witnesses or judges, and why. Okay? So there's legislation to expand the groups of people who are forbidden or are not believable as witnesses. You can't use them on a document, you can't bring them into court, they can't sit as a judge, all that kind of stuff, okay? So the two, all right, so let's dive in. 25b2, this is still Chazarah. This is a bit of a repetition of something that we did at the end before. Sochei Shvi'it, Elo Shenosin V'notnin, Beperot Shvi'it, Ve'ematai Chazaratan, Mishetagia Shvi'it Acheret Ve'yibadlu. So the Shvi'it merchants, this refers to those who trade in the fruit from the trees of Shvi'it. And when do I know that they've done Chazarah, they've done full tshuva? When the next Shvi'it arises and they haven't done it. We covered this at the end last time. The problem is that these people have to wait 7 years before they're believable again, because the sabbatical year comes once every 7 years. So you can sell the one box of apples and in a moment of weakness or greed, and now you have no way to make, a living reliably with documents and so forth for another 7 years. So the Baraita here comes and says, no, there's another way to do it. V'amar Rabbi Nechemia, lo chazarat devarim bilvad, amru ela chazarat mamon. It's not just about a verbal, devarim here doesn't mean things, it means words, a verbal repentance, but a repentance of money. They actually have to return the money. Ketzad, how? So how is it done? And it's done in the following way. Omer ani ploni bar ploni, me, John Doe, kinasti 200 zuz, I took in 200 gold pieces, zuzim, beperot shvi'it, in the sale of the fruit of shvi'it, the 7th sabbatical year, v'hare hen, and here they are. He's got the 200 zuzim in his hand, literally in his hand, and he says, v'hare hen nitunin b'matana la'aniyim, and here, I pledge them, I give them as a free gift, I give it away to the poor. So that's Stuart's question about if you've done this, can you give the fruit to a food bank, or can you give the money to a food bank? And the answer is yes. That is their kapara, that is their atonement, that is their teshuvah, that is their chazarah. That's how they return to good standing. So the Gemara says, katani mihat behema. So, knowing that, in any event, the Baraita taught that it is possible to do the equivalent of pigeon flying with a domestic animal. So we're going to kind of skip that thing that we just heard, and we're going to go back to this idea of, are you able to race or lure with a domesticated animal? So there was an argument about whether mafriach yonim meant pigeon racing or pigeon baiting. And we're on the piece of that argument that says whether or not a wild animal is necessary to bait the other animals of the species, right? So if I put, my domesticated calico cat on the back porch, if it attracts a jaguar, it's not going to be from brotherly love. It's going to be because the jaguar thinks this is food, right? The domesticated animal is not attractive to the wild animals of its species, right? That may be a thing. So can you really be baiting with a domesticated animal? Because the pigeon that you've got, if you're a mafriach yonim, if you're doing this with your own pigeons, you've domesticated them. So then the question is, can you do that, or do you need a wild animal? It's all an argument to try and say whether or not you can interpret that Mishnah as referring to baiting pigeons. Because if you have the wrong animal and it doesn't work, it can't possibly be meaning that. So it has to be pigeon racing. All right, so we've gone back to that argument. That's where we are right now. Okay? So we go back to that argument, and we're going to try and figure out whether or not you can do baiting with a wild animal or a domesticated animal. And the pigeon is the example. It's okay for the person who says this is about racing. You know, he says, my pigeon comes before yours. Right? Hainu de mishkachat lebehema. For then it's possible that it's done with a domesticated animal. All right, so behema is the animal, is like a domesticated animal on your farm, and a chaya is a wild animal in the woods or in the fields. Okay? Ela lamanda mar'ara, but for the person who says it is about baiting, behema bat hachihi, is a domesticated animal capable of baiting? How can he interpret the Mishnah that way, with a domesticated animal? And the answer is in, b'shura bar. So it's a little forced. We have an example in the Talmud with the wild ox, right? And the wild ox is not exactly wild. V'manda mar shura bar min behemahu. There's an opinion in a Tanaitic source that the wild ox is referred to as a domesticated animal even when it's not. So you could say, I use it for baiting, and since we consider it a domesticated animal, I'm proving to you we can use domesticated animals for baiting. It's not a very good argument, because it's still a wild ox, right? But it's a wild ox that's considered to be like a domesticated animal, therefore you can use domesticated animals, even real domesticated animals, and therefore the mafrich yonim, the pigeon flyers, can really be about baiting with a domesticated pigeon. It's not a good argument. Right? It's drawing an analogy from a wild ox that's called domesticated when it's not, to then draw an analogy to a truly domesticated animal when it is. Doesn't work. But anyways, that's what they're doing. That's what the logic is. Okay, Chamanda Amar Shor Bar Min Behema. For the person who holds it, it's like Ditnan, and here's the source of the person who said that about the wild ox. Ditnan, we're going to get a very quick snippet from a Mishnah from Tractate Kilaim, chapter 8, verse Mishnah 6, where it says, Shor Habar, you need some WD-40. you need to spray the wheels, Yabi. All right, Ditnan, we learned in a Mishnah, Shor Habar min behemahu. A wild ox is like domesticated, but Rabbi Yossi Omer min chaya, it's wild, and they dropped the topic. So that was fun. New topic. Okay, it just goes by. So that's why I gave you the background so you understand what it is. They're arguing about that. It doesn't really seem to work. Mafrich Hayonim is really not going to be baiting. The Shor Habar, the wild ox, really isn't going to be a basis for it. Let's move on. Now, the Gemara goes on, and this is our whole new topic. This is going to determine what we do today and probably next week. Tana. Remember, the word Tana means it's taught by a Tana, somebody from the Tanaim, a Mishnah age teaching. So this is a Baraita, it's not really in the Mishnah. Hosifu alehem hagazlanim v'achamsanim. So the rabbis added to the category of people who are pasul le'edut, who are forbidden as witnesses, thieves and chamsanim, which is a different kind of thief. So a gazlan, a thief, is what you think a thief is. He takes your stuff. Cover of night, it's a stick-up, with a threat of violence. He's taking your stuff. You get nothing for it. He's got your stuff, you've got bupkis. A chamsan, on the other hand, is you have to picture, I'm selling oranges, and I have a cart of oranges, and it has a sign that says $50 per orange, right? something ridiculous. And you come up to me and say, I just saw you sell those oranges for 25 cents each to a bunch of people. And I say, it's $50 an orange. And you say, it's 25 cents an orange, and I know it's 25 cents an orange. And we're arguing and we haven't settled on a price. Am I willing to sell you an orange?
Yes.
Yes. Are you willing to buy an orange?
Maybe.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
You want to buy the orange, and I want to sell you the orange.
Yeah.
And finally, you agree to pay the 50 because you really want the orange and you don't want to deal with me anymore.
And you're a Rothschild.
And I say, no, I have not enjoyed this conversation.
I won't sell it to you.
All right? And I go to check something in the back, and you put $50 on the table, and you take an orange, and you walk away. Have you stolen from me?
No.
In a way, yes. I can see it could go either way.
Did I agree to sell you the orange for $50?
No, you did not. You said no.
At the end, I had not agreed.
Right.
Did you pay the asking price for the orange?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Do you think you're a thief?
No.
Right? Do I think you're a thief?
Yes.
No, I have the $50, but I'm upset.
Okay, yes.
Right? So it's different than a thief. That's a chamsan. A chamsan is somebody who comes up and they put the money down and they take the thing and they didn't have your permission, but they paid you for it. Right? So, let's say you have a fruit stand by the side of the road. Where I grew up, no joke, you didn't man the fruit stand. You left a coffee can and the prices of the fruit, and you came back at the end of the day. And anybody who had wanted stuff has taken it and put the money in the jar. No joke. That's how I grew up. Okay? So if I drive by a fruit stand and I see prices, I'm going to assume that's what's going on, and I'm going to take the fruit and leave the money. What if the owner didn't have that understanding? What if this is the owner's fruit? What if the owner just bought all this stuff and didn't take the price tags off it, and he left it on the table in his front yard? What if he wasn't selling it all? Right? But can you call me a thief? Have I done something wrong? Right? I'm clearly a different category of person. And that's what they're talking about. Okay, so we have a different category. So that's the chamsan. All right, so here we go. Gazlan mid'oraitahu. Why are you wasting my time talking about a thief? It's in the Torah. Now that word mid'oraita is Aramaic, which means from the Ora, from the Torah. Okay, so mid'oraita, it's from the Torah. So I know the person's not allowed. Now you're not going to like where we're going next. I'm just going to tell you. You're not going to like it. We'll apologize for it a little bit. It's from another time. They get the halacha right, but the fact that they're willing to entertain this concern, you're not going to be happy. Just warning you. Okay, so a thief, why would the rabbis add thief? Well, we know they're not stupid, so they must have added it for a reason. But thief you already know, because it's forbidden in the Torah. So, lo tzricha ella lemitziat cheresh shotei v'katan. It's only needed in the case of a found object that is found by 3 halachically incompetent people. Any one of these 3 categories. And they are the deaf-mute, the person of extremely low IQ, or a minor. Okay? In Talmudic times, a deaf-mute has a hard time in most categories of contracts because it's not clear that they can articulate or understand the terms of a contract. So they don't really acquire in the same effective way that you or I might acquire. Now, in an age of disabilities, inclusion, and empowerment, we've come to understand that a person with such a disability is an equal legal player with anybody else in society. So that's someplace where we are both Jewishly and secularly when it comes to property law. You can't, presume that a deaf-mute does not have the ability to acquire property. The problem is in the Talmud, since they don't have the ability to really acquire things, when you take things from them, you may not be stealing because it may not be theirs. That's the part you don't like. That's the part I don't like. So a shotei, a mentally incompetent person, finds a $20 bill on the ground and picks it up. They have not acquired it. If one of us finds a $20 bill on the ground and picks it up, we have acquired it. So if the mentally incompetent person picks up the $20 bill and I walk over and take it from them, I have not stolen because it wasn't theirs. I'll say it again. I don't like this, you don't like this, we don't like this, right? Fine. A minor, the same thing. A deaf mute, the same thing. Now, this is where we get to where they got the halakha right. The category that we are willing to entertain is problematic, but they get the halakha right. So from the beginning, they would have thought that the case of one of these people finding an object and acquiring it and someone stealing it from them because they would think it's not stealing was not common, barely ever happened, not worth setting a whole system of halakha and law around it, right? But inami mipnei darchei shalom ba'alma. But they also outlawed it for the sake of peace, mipnei darchei shalom, for the ways of peace. So that's a really good answer. So they said you can't do it, which is the right answer. They said you can't do it because we want to have a peaceful society. They didn't say you can't do it because it's theft and they have rights. But they said you can't do it, so as long as the halakha is right, okay, yeah.
If the Chinese steal our technology, they make an inexpensive Apple phone, iPhone, does that mean we're not supposed to buy it because it's not really theirs to start with?
Correct, correct. So the case, when I was in rabbinical school, digitizing music was new. Everyone was still buying music on cassettes and CDs, mostly CDs. The idea of downloading a digital track of a song onto your computer and playing the music on your computer, there were no Walkman, there were no iPads, that didn't exist yet, was new. And there was this, I forget the name of it, but there was a trading service. Napster. And I had a very good friend in rabbinical school who was a Grateful Dead fan. And he had thousands of tracks of Grateful Dead music that he got from Napster, which is legal because the Grateful Dead explicitly made all of their music public domain. So that anybody, for no money, can always, so that's why you see people with boom mics and everything else, and they trade live recordings of all their concerts are being traded all the time for free among the Grateful Deadheads, because that's the culture of that band. On the other hand, pick another band, the Rolling Stones. If you go to a Rolling Stones concert and you record the concert and you trade it online, even not for money, you're breaking copyright law. You're distributing their property without them getting paid.
Sounds like that old, that old, about Major League Baseball, you can't they always had that warning, no transmission without the permission.
Right, exactly. You can't any further, recording or retransmission of this broadcast without the explicit permission of Major League Baseball is, right, same thing. So if you steal technology, someone steals technology, they produce something, they sell it, stolen technology, the whole thing is forbidden to you. Correct. I actually had this with my son. I was walking down the street in New York, near Madison Square Garden, and there was a truck that had, with stick-on letters and numbers on the door, Joe's Fruit and Vegetables, such and such a place in Brooklyn and so forth, and the back of the box truck was open, and it was counterfeit purses and CDs and, watches for $5 and all getting unloaded out of the truck that's labeled fruits and vegetables from Brooklyn, right? And there's a guy back there with a table and they're selling the stuff. Guaranteed there's not a legal item in that truck, right? There's just nothing about that looks to me like there's a legal item in the truck. Every single thing in there is a knockoff, a copyright, or a stolen, or all of the above, right? So I said, we can't buy from him. But you don't know.
Well,
Right? I mean, Louis Vuitton for $15. I think I know. Right? I was on eBay getting a gift the other day, and there's an item, whatever the item is. It goes retail from the company at $150. Right? So you're looking at the eBay things, and you click, sort by new, and you're getting your best price. There's one for $75. So I click on the picture and like the label has been peeled up in one of the corners. So you know what? It's not new. I'm not trusting it's $75. I got up to like $115, well under the normal rate. And it's a brand new box. And it's got but that's it, just a picture of the front of the box. There's another one for $5 more, but the pictures of the box include the bottom where the serial number is, the unique number for that item, right? So I made the decision to spend $5 more to buy the one that had actually taken a picture of the serial number of the item, because now it's identifiable.
What if they switch boxes?
It looked like an unopened box.
Yeah.
It looked like an unopened box. What I might not get that box. They might be sending me a stolen one. That might be a picture of a clean box. I don't know. But at that point, I think I've done enough due diligence that this might be somebody who was given a gift and they're unloading it on eBay for $20 less to get rid of it, which people do, right? So now, you see what I'm doing? So I'm moving myself out of the realm of suspicion into the realm of reasonable possibility, right? I'm not insisting on paying from the company at the price, because people sell cheaper sometimes, for whatever their reasons are, right? But eBay is also known to be a place where people fence stolen goods or sell knockoffs from overseas. All right, so what's happening here? So you have a person who has taken the found object of a deaf mute or a mentally incompetent person or a minor has found an object and I've stolen. That is forbidden for me to steal from them because of the rabbis saying for the sake of peace. Not because it's forbidden, but mipnei darchei shalom. What does that do for us? I'm a guy who steals candy from babies, literally.
Wasn't healthy for them anyway.
Can I testify in court?
No. Well, actually, it doesn't belong to the baby, so yes, you can.
So the rabbis have now made it that I can't, but only mipnei darchei shalom,
Yeah,
right?
not that it's illegal.
Right, so am I a Russia? Am I unbelievable in anything? Or is it only in specific, like, court testimony? You know what I mean? So it's an ambiguous case, an ambiguous situation. Let's move on. Inami minei darchei shalom ba'alma, kevan dechazu desof sof, mimonachu dekashakle paslinu rabbanan. And why did they say mipnei darchei shalom? Why did they rule these guys out, people who steal from this kind of a person? Not only for the sake of peace, but they had to have a reason. And the reason is because sof, which is a way of saying, all things being even at the end of days, or, ultimately, the person is stealing for money. They're grabbing at money. They're doing it to take money that's not theirs and put it in their pocket. That's the motivator. And so the rabbis really look at that and they're going to look down their nose at that, and they're going to say, that really smells wrong. They've got a motivator of money. But the next category, okay, hachamsanim,
25B.
25B3,
Top left.
Meikar savur demei kayehev, the chamsan is actually giving money for the thing. Ikrai ba'almahu, it's just a thing that happens. So it's not like the person who does that is like a thief who's walking up to somebody, grabbing money and running away. This is a person who is giving money for an object, and it's just a thing that happens. It doesn't feel like that person thinks he's doing a crime. Kevan dechazu dekachat fe gazru v'ho rabbanan. But unfortunately, once the word got out and people started walking into market and grabbing things and throwing the money down and grabbing things and throwing the money down, the rabbis enforced a decree against that behavior. They made that behavior illegal because it got out of hand, right? I mean, you're a shop owner. You need to maintain some control, some decorum, some inventory knowledge or whatever. People just walking in, throwing money on the counter, walking away. How many times have you been in a line in the store and you know exactly how much the thing is and it's in your hand, and there's 10 people in front of you and one of them's counting out pennies, right? You want to just walk up and say, I've got the New York Times, here's the money, you put it on the counter and you walk away. Now, if you get the guy's attention and he nods at you, you're okay. But if he's not paying any attention to you and you just walk up and you put the money down and walk away, you're a chamsan. Right? Because you don't know for sure he's selling you that paper. There are a lot of good ideas, but the rabbis outlawed that. They didn't want that kind of behavior going on. Mipnei darchei shalom, probably. Okay?
Would that also involve eminent domain? Because that's the first thing that came to mind.
Eminent domain is when the government takes over your property.
Yeah, but sometimes they'll do it for private purposes, not for public.
Yes, the
purposes.
government can take your property to give to a land developer for a mall that the town really needs. That's one piece of eminent domain, right?
Build a wall.
It doesn't matter if they build the wall on their side of the border, on our side of the border. Okay, I don't know if that applies to this. Achamsan. Okay, now Tana. So the Gemara is going to come and deal again with this category of other people who are forbidden to be used as testimony in a court case. And this is really, this stuff really does get legs in the halachic system. All of this stuff winds up being very real. Tana. It is taught in a Braita, a Tanaitic source. Od hosifu alehem aharoim v'hagabaim v'hamochsim. They also added three other categories: shepherds, tax collectors, and custom collectors. And the footnote in the Shadchan is very good. It succinctly solves the question, what's the difference between a gabai and a moches? Everyone knows what a shepherd is. A gabai is absolutely a tax collector. This person walks into town, walks up to your house, walks into your business, and forces you to give him or her money that he or she will then turn around and give to the government. That's a tax collector. It might be a feudal system. It might be a king or a prince or a duke because of some royalty and you are a serf. Or it might be an elaborate capitalistic empire that is taxing its citizens in the ways that modernity taxes. This is a person who is doing their job.
IRS agent.
They are an IRS agent. They are coming in. The only problem is that the gabai, the gabayuta, the tax collection system was not exactly impartial or predictable or just. So even though it was the emperor's tax collector coming and collecting taxes from everyone, they usually just told you what they wanted. It wasn't based on a formula. It was based on, you look like you've got a nice car, you owe me $5,000. I know you, give me $20. It was very uneven, and the coercion was very high, although try not to pay the IRS, and you'll see how coercive they can be, right? But it was not a system of justice. So there was deep resentment and suspicion around tax collectors. They're felt to be harmful people, even though they're just doing their job, right? The moches, on the other hand, is somebody who is collecting for their own personal gain. And the Tosafot and the Shadchan here have defined that as a person who pays the government the franchise fee to collect taxes in this area. So the government doesn't want to be in the business of collecting from 500 different citizens in the town of Chutzplatz and figuring out whether they're lying or not lying on their taxes. The government tells, Ron, you pay me $50,000 a year to collect the taxes in this town because I look at that town and I think that town overall should be generating $50,000 of taxes. And as long as you're giving me the $50,000 a year, I empower you, backed up by my army and police, to go collect the taxes in any way that you deem good and proper. I don't care. You pay me the 50, go collect some taxes. That's the moches. So the moches is actually personally benefiting because obviously he's not going to collect less than 50,000.
Right.
And if he's going to try and make a living, he's going to collect more than 50,000. How much more?
How honesty is.
As much as he can get. That may be limited by his honesty, or he may be limited by his power.
And it's greed.
Exactly. All right, so the Roe seems like a normal guy. The Gabai seems like a more dislikable normal guy, and the moches seems like a real stump, right? Kind of, sort of, when I look at these three. But they're all problematic. All right, so now, ro'im, herders, shepherds. Does this mean Adonai ro'i lo ichsar? Psalm 23, God is my shepherd, God cannot testify in court? But a bunch. Okay, me'ikara savor ikare ba'almahu. Why do they rule out shepherds? You would think shepherds are fine. And you know what? From the beginning, they thought that anything herders would do that was harmful was only an occasional thing.
So like Moshe Rabbeinu.
He was a shepherd. That's right. Moshe Rabbeinu was a shepherd. Kevan dechazu deka mechavne v'shadu lechatchila gazru behem rabbanan. And when they saw that they were intentionally doing it from the beginning, the rabbis decreed against them. So what are they doing that's wrong? The shepherd is out there in the fields shepherding his flock. What's the purpose of shepherding a flock?
Letting them eat.
Letting them eat. What if it's not your field? When you move your flock from place to place to place, there are no boundaries out there on the sides of the hills. They're just hills. And if you walk them into town, as they go to town, they're going to be nibbling at the roses along the way as they go. That's what animals do. And just by moving your flock around, they are eating stuff, maybe destroying stuff, right? So most shepherds, they're just out there. It's not a problem. Occasionally they may go through somebody's field, or they wandered off into the wheat instead of the grass, and it caused real damage. But these are occasional occurrences. Not a problem. Once the shepherds realized that there's no way for them to be taken to court over this, they started sending their flocks into the wheat fields, because there's no more nutritious place for them to graze than wheat fields. So once they saw they were intentionally sending the flocks in places they were doing damage, now the rabbis ruled against them and made them all as if they are thieves. So now shepherds are thieves.
Wasn't David a shepherd also?
David was a shepherd. We have lots of shepherds. All right. Hagabaim mochsim. So let's look at the tax collectors. By the way, we're coming back to shepherds for a really long time. But in the meantime, we're going to deal with these other two. The tax collector and the custom collector, they call it in Schottenstein. Mikaras avur mai dekets lahu kashachle. So they originally thought, look, they just collect what is assessed. They're just doing their jobs. These guys were not originally pasul le'edut, but they made them pasul le'edut. Why? What happened? Originally, they thought, they're just doing their jobs. They're not bad guys. They're not stealing. They're collecting things people should be paying, whether they like it or not. Kevan dechazu dekash shakle yetera paslinun. However, when they saw that they were collecting more than the assessed amounts, then they got disqualified. Okay? So, does that apply to the tax collector and the moches equally?
Sounds like it.
It would sound like it, but we have a problem.
How would you have them separate?
Tax collectors were often Jews appointed by the non-Jewish empire, because they knew the town and they knew the people. So I'm going to hire you as my tax collector to collect among the Jews. Obviously, if I come in as the Babylonian tax collector, as I walk down the street, everyone's going to be hiding all the gold and jewelry and putting on their torn clothing and rubbing dirt on their kid's face, break a window in the house, make everything look. When the tax collector comes to your home, if you know the day they're going to assess your home, is that the day you put in new landscaping? Probably not. You want your house to look kind of not so nice for the tax collector. But if it's a Jewish guy in your town who lives there all the time, they know you. So that's usually who the tax collector is.
Did the tax collector work for the custom collector? Was it like
No.
they didn't.
No, these are separate. You either have a tax collector or you have a custom collector in that scenario, if that's who in fact it is. It's possible the machloket is in the Rishonim. The later rabbis argue over who the moches is. Is it somebody who's taxing things that are coming into town, but the gabbai is the person who taxes the people who live in the town? Is it import-export duty? They go into all kinds of crazy stuff. Okay? For now on, we'll just say it's two different ways of collecting. Okay, the problem is this. Once you know it's Jewish people being paid to be the tax collector, and they're not really doing anything wrong, now you're talking about someone in your community. I'm actually taking somebody in my community who's just making a living, and I'm saying, you're not a kosher witness. And in this case, it's going to be the father of Reb Zera, one of the important rabbis of the Talmud. So, we're going to have to deal with that. All right, now, let's deal with Rava first. Amar Rava. So Rava's going to go back to the shepherds for a minute before we get into the father of Reb Zera. So Rava comes in, very important rabbi, Babylonia. Ro'eh she'amru echad, ro'eh behema deka echad. So he says they... Oh, I'm sorry, I read it wrong. Ro'eh she'amru echad, ro'eh behema deka echad, ro'eh behema gasa. The two categories of shepherds are both ineligible as witnesses. What are the two categories? Behema daka and behema gasa. A little animal and a big fat animal. Right? So in other words, you've got sheep or goats, or you've got bulls and oxen. Okay? You might think they're very different. If your worry is that as I shepherd, I'm doing damage, what kind of damage do the sheep do?
Eat the plants all
They
the
eat the
way
plant all the way down, right down to the roots. Oxen and cows don't do that. Horses and cows do not destroy the pasture they're in. They eat the growth and leave the shoots. What damage do they do? They are big, heavy animals. They destroy the land with their feet. So if you lead a bunch of sheep through a wheat field, they're going to eat it. If you lead a bunch of oxen through a wheat field, they're going to trample it.
Either way you lose.
Either way you lose, but they're two different things. So you might say, I'm worried about one and not the other.
Difference without a distinction or whatever.
Maybe. But they're going to start talking about the two different groups of people, okay? So Rava says that a shepherd, that it's the two categories of shepherd are the same. Now, this is where I'm going to have to start this thing. All right. So I have a baraita. The baraita says that the shepherd, the tax collector, and the custom are all no good. Okay? Now, the next topic is going to be Rava says any shepherd. Okay? Big animals and little animals. Any shepherd is, these are people who are not kosher witnesses. The Gemara now comes in and challenges that statement. Umi amar Rava hachi. Who said Rava ever said that? V'hamar Rava, but I have a teaching of Rava that says, Ro'eh behema daka be'eretz Yisrael pesulim v'chutz ha'aretz kasherim. So Rava says, Israel and small is not a kosher witness. If you're in Israel with small animals, you're not a kosher witness. If you're outside Israel and small, you are kosher as a witness. And big animals anywhere, you are a kosher witness. Okay? So, this is a challenge. But, Ihachi, I have a teaching of Rava that says this, which contradicts that in at least 3 of these 4 scenarios. Big animals in and out, and small animals out. He's kosher. Rava taught that. So how can you say that Rava says any shepherd is not kosher? Right? Good challenge. Hahu b'megadlin itmar. Oh no. Now, it's okay because that was about
To raise animals.
Farm husbandry. In other words, raising animals on a farm. They are in a barn. They are in a pasture. They are contained. You are growing animals for market. They're not out there messing with other people's fields. So Rava said any shepherd is not kosher, but I have a teaching of Rava that says these guys are kosher shepherds? And the answer to that is that teaching of Rava was only about animals on farms. Then why are they called shepherds instead of farmers? But okay. Right? All right, so now we're going to go from there. Hachinami mistabra, but this also seems likely. Mida katani ne'amanim alai shlosha ro'e vakar. Now it's going to go back to the Mishnah, which is why I started class this way. If you go back to the Mishnah on 24a, you'll see the case where the man says, I accept your father. Right? Or, and the next person he accepts is shlosha ro'e vakar. Or I accept 3 cattle shepherds. Right? That's somebody he's allowed to accept. Normally not allowed, but he can accept them. All right? So this is also likely that since it was taught in the Mishnah that I can accept 3 cattle herders, my lav le'edut, wasn't that about them being kosher witnesses? So there's some idea that they can be kosher witnesses or they're not kosher witnesses. But la ladina, no, that's for adjudication. That's for beit din. Remember we had an argument about the Mishnah. Are we talking about people who are kosher judges or people who are kosher witnesses? That comes back. And here it says, no, that wasn't about them being kosher witnesses. It was about them being kosher judges. You're saying that you're willing to accept 3 cattle herders as your judges on a beit din. So, I went the wrong way. Sorry. And daikanami, and we can find this also true by being really diuk, being very close to the grammar, because the Mishnah said to katani shlosha ro'e vakar, 3 cattle herders. Right? Ve'ile dut shlosha lamali. And if I'm talking about witnesses, why do I need 3? How many do you need as witnesses? Just 2. So since the Mishnah said 3, you could say that's not about them being witnesses, because you only need 2 to be witnesses. The Mishnah was very careful to say 3, which means the Mishnah was definitely talking about beit din and not about witnesses. Now, the objection they don't raise, which is obvious, is why would you allow someone to be a judge who's not a kosher witness? That doesn't make sense. But they're playing with it. All right, so what do you learn from the fact that this person can accept those 3 on his beit din? The alamai ladina. All right, so now, also, 3 cattle herders can be your beit din, if you allow it. Okay? So but that's okay, and also this. The elamai ladina, but what is ladina? What do you, if you're going to say they came to teach it that it's about beit din, they wouldn't teach it's about beit din unless it was possible to think it about something other than beit din. You had to teach it was beit din because you think it could be something else. So now the question is, what else could it possibly have been that they had to teach it's beit din? So what did they say? My Arya Shlosha Ro'e Bakar. Why does it speak of 3 cattle herders specifically? Kol Beitlata Delo Gamedina Name. They could have talked about any 3 guys. I could say I accept any 3 guys as my beit din. Why did it specifically say cattle herders? And the answer is Hachi Kamar. This is why it said it. Afilu Hani Delo Shechiche B'Yishuv. Even these 3 guys who don't participate in the Yishuv of the Olam. All the way back to the first Mishnah. These guys, even though they have jobs, are out there in the middle of nowhere. They're not in town. They don't participate in the economic reality, the functioning of society. You might have thought these 3 guys, like the dice player, is not busy in the Yishuv, and you would not allow them to be witnesses or on a beit din. But the Mishnah then comes to teach you that even these 3 guys that are not in the Yishuv can be your beit din. Therefore, anybody can be your beit din if you let them. So that's the reason why that's there. Does that make them kosher witnesses, or only if you allow it? Might not have anything to do with witnesses, might only be beit din. We don't know. So we've raised unresolved problems. Okay? You with me? Yes or no? Because this is a moment, up to this point, I can still explain what's going on. All right.
If they're eligible, there's no proof that they are ineligible to be witnesses.
Right. What we did say was it doesn't seem like they were brought to prove they could be witnesses, because there's 3 of them. It seems that they were brought to prove they could be your Beit Din. And why these 3? Because
They're impartial.
they're
They
the
haven't
most
been affected by the media.
unlikely 3 to be a Beit Din. They're like the last people you would ever accept as a Beit Din. Right? Now, is that because they're not in the Yishuv, or is that because they are shepherds, and shepherds are suspect? Right now we're saying it's because of the Yishuv. Now, the Baraita disqualified herders and tax collectors, and now we're going to distinguish between them. Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said, Stam roe pasul, stam gabai kasher. Okay? New topic. Rabbi Yehuda. He says, so any shepherd is not kosher. Rabbi Yehuda says, a simple, normal shepherd is not kosher, but a simple tax collector is kosher. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Now, he's got to figure out what the heck is being taught in the rabbinic teaching that says Gabayim are not kosher. So he's saying they are. So Rabbi Yehuda is up against the Baraita. Right? So this is my original Baraita. 3 groups of people that are not kosher witnesses. Rabbi Yehuda is challenging, saying that a simple shepherd, okay, but a simple tax collector, not okay. Should be a fine witness. Why? And we're going to get into this idea that Rabbi Zera's saintly father, right? You're going to call Rabbi Zera, who is the son of a tax collector, to be the son of a man who's not a kosher witness? How can you do that? Okay, so, Avu de Rabbi Zera. Avad Gabayuta Tlesar Shanim. Rabbi Zera's father was a tax collector for 13 years. Kihavate Reish Nahara Lamata, when the Rosh, when his boss, the district chief, the head of the tax collecting unit, would be coming to town to oppress the local Jews and collect the taxes from them, what did Rabbi Zera's father, the local Jewish representative who collects taxes, what did he do? Ki hava chaze rabbanan, whenever he saw rabbis, he started quoting Isaiah in a way that tipped them off that the big bad tax collector was coming to town, so they can go and make their homes look impoverished and hide the gold and silver and all the other things, right? So he would warn them off. Amar laho, lech ami bo bachadarecha. Go, my people, enter your rooms. It's just a quote from Isaiah. So he's going down the street mumbling verses of Tanakh to himself, but it's tipping people off. However, ki hava chaze einshe demata, when he saw the simple folk, regular folk on the streets, he said, Reish nahara ata lamata v'ha'idna nachis abba lefum bara uvara lefum abba. Today he will slaughter the Father in the presence of the Son, and the Son in the presence of the Father, which is rather dramatic. He's not saying anything about taxes, but he is certainly saying dire things that people would be very, very afraid. So the rabbis, he basically uses code language that says, go specifically hide your stuff. And to the people, he says, horrible things are coming. Right? Fathers and sons are going to all be killed. All right? Okay. Miganzu kule alma, and everyone would go into hiding when he said that. Ki'ate amarle, so he's now done this. He's given all this code language and everyone's off hiding. And his boss comes and says to him, Miman gabai, who are we collecting from today? So now everyone's hiding in the town, and the guy comes up and he looks at him, he sees empty streets and shuttered doors, and he says, okay, where's the money? Who are we collecting from? So then they would go collect. All right, that's how it was done. So is Rabbi Zera's father a good guy or a bad guy?
Well, from our perspective, he's a good guy. From the district chief, he'd be a bad guy.
Right. So ironically, Rabbi Yehuda is saying a simple tax collector is kosher, and we're given the story of Rabbi Zera. What makes Rabbi Zera's father kosher? The fact that he's unethical in the administration of his duties. Right? So the only way that makes any sense is if his duties are unethical. So now by being unethical against an unethical system, he's in fact doing good. He's Robin Hood. He's stealing from people who have stolen. He's undermining somebody who's coming to unfairly tax the people. And he's tipping off the Rabbanan, which the rabbis, of course, I'm going to help the rabbis avoid their taxes. They're going to rule in my favor, I guess.
Right, it's two wrongs make a right.
If you can use more tools against evil than you can against good, I guess. Do two wrongs make a right? It's clear that Rabbi Zera's father is undermining his job as a tax collector to the benefit of the people. And the Talmud is in a presumptive state that tax collectors are bad. The outside empire is coming unjustly to oppress us through this entire system. And this smart local Jewish tax collector is doing his best to run interference and to help us out. And therefore, he's a believable guy, not trying to line his pockets. Remember, why did the rabbis outlaw tax collectors? It said when they started collecting more than was assessed. That's not Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera is doing the opposite. He's making sure the assessments are artificially low. Right? So that's the opposite of what the rabbis were worried about. The rabbis were worried about tax collectors who line their pockets. This guy's not doing that. Therefore, Stam tax collector in Rabbi Yehuda's mind is going to be a kosher guy. But a Stam shepherd, simple shepherd, is not kosher because you can't stop the sheep from eating the plants. Like, there's no way to mitigate that. The job inherently will cause damage to other people's property. So, and they don't care. Okay, so that's what Rabbi Yehuda is saying. Aye, all right. Now, we have a little end to the story, and then we'll finish for today. Perfect timing. So, Ki nicha nafshe amar laho. As Rab Zera's father was on his deathbed, when his soul was resting, niche from nach, nafshe from nefesh. When his soul was resting at the end of his life, he said, Shekolo tleisar ma'ai ditzayre li bisidinai v'hadaru le flanya. He says, take 13 ma'ah, that's a measurement of coins, that I have wrapped in my handkerchief, and return it to so-and-so, to Ploni. Dishkaltinhu mine velo itzterichuli. I took them as taxes, but I did not need them. So he's dying, and he's got somebody's taxes that he collected that his boss never asked for. He collected in excess of what was needed. You would think he would just keep it, like the moches keeps it, but he didn't. He said he was dying, nobody would ever know. He could have been left, his children would have benefited from it. I mean, nobody knew. Legally collected and no protest had ever been filed. He reveals it, he says, give it back to the man, proving that a tax collector can be a good guy. And in that way, I hear an echo to the chazarah, the teshuvah, the repentance of the butcher and the socher shvi'it, who at the end prove their worthiness by returning extra money that they could have benefited from, right? By returning it or giving it off to another person's benefit. And so we have three different parallels of that being the resolution of an otherwise uncomfortable financial benefit that a person has received. Three different categories, three different ways, but they all kind of resolve in the same way. Everyone caught all that? All right, so next week we're going to pick up Amar Rav Shimon, B'tchila ayu korino tan osfei shvi'it. We're going back to the osfei shvi'it, and we're going to learn where that change came from. Okay?
In Hebrew, do they differentiate between a goat herder shepherd and a cattle herder, or is it all one word?
Goat herder, cattle herder. They say ro'e dakar, ro'e gasa, and ro'e bakar. Those are the three terms they use. Ro'e dakar is a shepherd of little things. Ro'e gasa is a shepherd of fat things. And ro'e bakar is a shepherd of cattle, specifically.
Is that Aramaic or Hebrew?
Those are Hebrew words. Dakar gasa. Yeah.
I thought they used gadol and katal.
Dakar and kasa are actually Aramaic words, but they exist in the Hebrew. They're Aramaic forms of a Hebrew word.
Okay.
Because dak and gas are both Hebrew The aleph on the end is the Aramaic ending.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Baruch Tiyeh.